What ifs? This fall, what if it happens? Well, we got 4 real good ones tonight. And the first is a nightmare scenario for our friends in South Florida. It has to do with Mario Cristobal, it has to do with Miami. Chad said, what if year 2 from Mario Cristobal has little improvement from year 1? Is he still going to be the head coach at the end of the year? Chad, I would love for you to have just given me a record. So they went 5-7 last year. If you're saying they have little to no improvement, let's just say 6-6. At least we made a bowl. So 6-6. If Miami goes 6-6, is Mario Cristobal the head coach? Well, let me answer the second part. Yeah, he'll still be the head coach. I got very little doubt he'll be retained as the head coach. Could there be staff turnover? Yeah, of course. That stuff happens all the time anyway. So he'd still be the head coach there outside of scandal happening off the field. Top 10 portal, top 10 recruiting in the 2023 cycle. Talent acquisition's been there. I know the detractors would be saying, well, yeah, but Mario's always recruited well. Look at this, though, yet again, underachieving on the field. Told you. I can go ahead and print that on a fortune cookie and break it open in December. If this happens, that's what that fortune cookie's going to say. I got a hard time seeing it happen, though, Chad. Now, the over-under 7.5 wins, so it's well within the realm of possibility. I got a hard time seeing them not show some improvement. Now, I told you when I was down there a couple of weeks ago, and I'll tell you again, 2024 is really the year they got circled. That doesn't mean they're just overlooking 2023. Far from that. But 2024 is when they feel like they'll just be fully off the ground with their version of that Miami roster. But in the meantime, what'd they just do? They brought in 2 new coordinators. Both of them hail from Louisiana, ironically. You talk about rural Louisiana being plugged into the Miami nightlife scene. What a time for Lance Guidry down there, Shannon Dawson, what a time. What a time for the locals trying to understand what they're saying. Good guys, though. Love both of those guys. I got a hard time seeing them not improve off 5-7. And by improve, I mean, let's get up into that 8-win range. How about that? Don't have an easy schedule, though. That's what stands in the way of it, potentially. There's some teams like Louisville. We're about to talk about them later in the show. Louisville has just a masterclass in how to draw a favorable schedule in the ACC. Miami does not have that. I think outside of themselves, they play 4 of the 5 other top teams in terms of odds in the ACC this fall. Not an excuse we're baking in, but we're not asking them to win 11 games either, so... If it were to happen, Chad, yes, I still think he'd keep his job. Next up, let's go to the great Big Ten. This would revolutionize the sport, Adam. Adam said, what if Michigan wins the national championship? Adam, it would be a massive deal for Michigan. I think it would be just as big a deal for the Big Ten. There has not been a Big Ten team win a national championship aside from Ohio State this millennium. Last time it was you guys. It was 1997. So the Big Ten inside its own walls is thought of as a multi-team conference. I'm telling you, in Austin, Texas, or in Fresno, California, or in Albany, Georgia, when those folks look at the Big Ten, for a while, they came to think of Ohio State and then a bunch of randos. And then all of a sudden, Jim Harbaugh in Michigan started making noise the last 2 years. But even then, while you guys internally think, all right, Big Ten's turning a corner, in Fresno and Austin and Albany, they're just saying, so even Ohio State can't win the national title anymore because they watched you crash and burn Michigan twice in the playoffs, so they're not scared of you either. So if Michigan were to win the national title this year, aside from what it does for the legacy of Jim Harbaugh, think about what it does for the Big Ten, because in reality, Ohio State's still a primetime player. But if you all of a sudden introduced a new one to the mix, that instead of just being a playoff contender, is now a perennial title contender, and you're going into a new world for the Big Ten where you're adding UCLA and USC. Who knows what else happens? And you got those new media rights deals, that big new TV deal. It would happen just in the nick of time from a marketing perspective alone for the Big Ten. As for Jim Harbaugh, we talked about him the other day. I did the whole what is your opinion of Jim Harbaugh thing. He would transform himself. This would be his Mark Richt moment. Mark Richt in 2012 was, it turns out, as close as he was ever going to get to transforming himself from being thought of as a really good college football coach to being great, on top of the mountain, mentioned with the best of the best. because they came up about 5 or 6 yards short in an SEC championship game against Alabama. They didn't go on and have the opportunity to splatter Notre Dame in 2012 like they would have done, like Alabama did, and Rick never came close again. Harbaugh's come close a couple of times. He's gotten to the playoff. They just couldn't get to the title game. If he finally gets there, it would be his Berlin Wall moment. It would be the one that Rick swung at and missed, and he swings at it, Jim Harbaugh, and hits it. All of a sudden, college football would talk about him totally differently. History would talk about him totally differently. That all of a sudden goes from a guy that can't get over the hump. In one fell swoop, they start saying things like, man, how many other coaches have coached in the Super Bowl and won a national championship game? And you would look at these people and say, aren't you the same one who told me they were supposed to fire him 2.5 years ago? No, that wasn't me. Yes, it was, but it's okay. We've all been wrong a time or two. A lot of folks were wrong. In this scenario, if this happens, a lot of folks would have been wrong. Oh, by the way, Stats and Info tells me if they just make the playoff this year, if Michigan just makes the playoff this year, Jim Harbaugh will be one of only 4 head coaches with back-to-back-to-back playoff appearances. And that would be alongside Lincoln Riley, Nick Saban, and Dabo Swinney. Kirby Smart, at that point, may have pulled it off as well. But the impact on Michigan, the impact on the Big Ten, we also have to ask ourselves in this what if Michigan wins the national title, it probably means they beat Ohio State. Not definitely, but probably. That's a whole new what if. What if that happens? Well, what if Michigan wins the title? What happened to Ohio State? I don't know. Maybe we'll find out. I don't know. The next one takes us to Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Tyler asked, what if Bama's quarterback battle goes all season? Well, Tyler, this is not going to happen. Jesse watched me write that on a piece of paper, and he said, well, surely you're not going to say that. What are you actually going to say? No, Jesse, you call me on my bluff, and I'll throw my cards down every time. It's not going to happen. The quarterback battle is not going to go all season long. They're going to decide on a top 2 early in fall camp if they haven't already, which is the other big question. Whomst are those two going to be? And then they'll find themselves a starter, and they'll probably stick with him. And if he's not good enough, and if he's not prolific enough through the air, they'll just run the ball 60% of the time because they got the horses and the offensive line to do it. What you're not going to see is you're not going to see Nick Saban allow himself to step to a podium every Monday morning in Tuscaloosa, weeks 1 through 12, and be asked, all right, what are we getting this week at quarterback? That's just not going to happen. It's not practical. That's not how major programs operate. Ones that are far worse and unstable than Alabama don't operate that way. Nick Saban's not going to allow his program to operate that way. Now, that's not me telling you Bryce Young will just be reincarnated in one of these guys magically out of thin air. He won't. They don't have a Bryce Young caliber quarterback there. They're probably not going to need one if the team is wired the right way from the neck up, which is what we've talked about a lot. And also, if they don't feel like they can push the ball consistently down the field through the air, that doesn't mean, contrary to semi-recent popular belief, they have to shut the program down. It just means that they have to play a different style of football. That's it. Alabama can win every game on their schedule running the ball the way they used to. We all know also the way they used to play coincided with playing a little bit different caliber defense. So when we ask these questions about quarterback, it's not in a vacuum. Whether it's Ty Simpson or Milroe or even Buckner, that alone's not telling me the whole story. Is this secondary going to play the way that I think they could? Is their depth on the defensive front going to be more quality than it has been? The players are there. It just has to perform. I do not think you're going to see a 12-week quarterback battle, though. Lastly, this is almost like a soap opera storyline for the what-ifs here. Tate said, what if Brent Venables gets a playoff win before Lincoln Riley? I'm not sure where I'm supposed to go with this. Now, I know where Tate's going, and I know where Oklahoma fans would go. So first off, let's just address that. If Lincoln Riley ends up making the playoff again and losing, or making it 2 years in a row and losing, and he messes around, and he lets Oklahoma, led by Brent Venables, get in that thing and win a playoff game before he does, they'd have to shut down Norman for a couple of days. I don't know how you handle the public school system there. I don't know how private business operates, and I'm not here to tell you your business. I'm just saying, it would be a big deal. For those folks, it would be a big deal. It would be like being cheated on, and then you pull up to a red light, and there she is waiting for the bus. That's exactly what it would be. No offense to bus riders. I've been one a time or two in my life. Some of my best friends in life I met on buses. But I'm saying, if you see the one who left you in dire straits and you see the one you're with helping you to thrive, it does a little something. It's a little pick-me-up to the soul. And the more sinister-minded you are, you know, the Eddie Raddos of the world, for those out in that portion of the country, you'll know who I'm talking about. The more sinister in mind that you are, the more it would mean. As for me, I would sit here and go, all right, well, that means Oklahoma is off and running, and they're a good program, and Lincoln Riley and USC probably haven't fallen off in this scenario. It probably just means their defense still can't stop molasses in December, and he hasn't made the proper changes to his staff. That's probably what that means. On the other hand, it also means that Brent Venables has finally lived up to his reputation as a defensive-minded coach whose defense last year woefully underachieved, or maybe expectations were set too high, one or the other. I say finally, like he's been there 5 years. He's been there 1 year. So that's what it would mean for me. What it would mean for the folks in Norman, totally different story. Thank you, Chad. I think it was Chad.